on today's video, we're going to talk about a very controversial topic: why you should never pay your collections. And more importantly, I'm explaining to you as to why you should never pay your collections, but I'm also going to talk to you as to how you need to deal with your collections. But I'm going to give you some really key reasons as to why you should pay your collections as it pertains to managing your credit. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, great. So I'm glad that you're back with us. So now let's first talk about, and actually I want to talk about collections and charge-off. Again, we're going to talk about why you should never pay your collections. So where do collections come from? So number one, collections come from an original creditor. Maybe you went to a hospital, maybe you didn't pay that cell phone bill, or whatever the case might be. Maybe you didn't pay that bill, and now you have a collection on your credit report. So number one, I want to explain to you as to why I believe you should never pay any collections off your credit report. And the number one reason is generally the consumer's mindset. They think by paying off the collection, they're actually helping to improve their credit. And that's actually the number one reason I want to say that you should never pay off a collection, because paying your collections off does not get them removed off your credit report unless there's a prior agreement in place with the collection companies to remove the items off the credit report. It does not automatically get the collections removed off your credit report. So that's number one, just that mindset that most people have, that if they pay a collection, they're helping to improve their credit. It just does not work like that, unfortunately. And that leads me to reason number two. As I mentioned in reason number one, most consumers pay their collections or charge off with an understanding, thinking that it helps them remove items or it helps better their credit. And that's not what it does, as I just explained a second ago. So now let's quickly understand the Fair Credit Reporting Act as I discussed number two. The Fair Credit Reporting Act states that information on your credit report can be reported up to 7 years based on the last date of activity. That is the key word there that I want to focus on, the last date of activity. So let's just say, for example, you owed me $100. Okay, you're right there. You're watching this video. You owe me $100. And you've owed me this $100 for the last 3 years. Technically speaking, based on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, this item that I've been reporting on your credit report for the last 3 years can report for an additional 4 years. Given the fact that you have the 7-year rule, of course, right? Now, what happens is, let's just say you win the lottery today and you go out there and you actually pay that $100. You send me my $100 that you owe me for the last 3 years. It's been on your credit report. What I'm forced to do now is to go ahead and update that reporting with the credit bureaus that, okay, you paid that collection. Now what that does is it changes the last date of activity. Now that collection item will actually not come off the credit report for another 7 years from that last date you made a payment. You're basically kicking yourself in the foot. This is another reason that I say it doesn't do you no good as a consumer to pay that collection. So that's one aspect that I want to talk about. Another thing is, and again, nobody's losing sleep because you owe a collection company. Okay, and if that's you, man, you definitely got one ticket way to heaven. Okay, but nobody loses sleep because they owe a collection company. They just don't. Okay, and the reason why we pay these collections again is to improve our credit. So affecting the last date of activity, you changing that last date of activity, and you have to understand the way FICO algorithm works is, the more older the items are, the less impact they have on your score. The more recent the items are, the more impact that they have on your score. So the older item have less impact than the most recent items on your credit. So by you changing the last date of activity from that collection, in our example, from that item being 3 years old, and now it's just boom, much more recent because the last date of activity was a much recent date, that actually does affect your credit score. It can actually negatively impact your credit score. Another thing is, a lot of people forget that each state has what we call statute of limitations, okay? And this is one of the, I'm leading up to number three, because when we talk about fixing credit, we talk about the different tactics that we use in order to get these items off the credit report. The statute of limitation is one of the tactics that is used, and the reason I want to explain this is, by paying that item off, number one, you might get rid of the incentive that a company like us have to get that collection company to remove the item off the credit report. If you still owe them money, we can actually reach out to them and be like, hey, this gentleman owes you a certain amount of money. Let's see what we can do, if we can negotiate some type of payment if you agree to remove that item off the credit report. By you making that payment, of course, removes that incentive that you may have when addressing this issue with that collection company as it pertains to you still getting the item removed off the credit report. Another thing is statute of limitations. Each state has what we call a statute of limitation on debts. Of course, the Federal Credit Reporting Act states that the information can be reported for a period of 7 years, but that only governs the reporting aspect of the debt. It doesn't govern the legality of the debt, if the debt is legal or not. That is governed by the state laws. Each state has their own laws. We do provide a chart. I'll probably put a link below for you guys to download it. So if you don't see the link below, put a comment down, and I'll provide you that chart that shows you the statute of limitation in each state, so you can look up your state. So in my state, giving an example, in the state of Arkansas, that's where our office is located, the statute of limitation is 3 years, meaning that if somebody owes you money, you have a 3-year period to actually take that individual to court and get a judgment issued. If you do not do that within a 3-year period, based on the last set of activity, then that gentleman or that person, or you that owe me $100 for the last 3 years, you don't legally owe me $100 anymore. You morally could owe me that $100, but you do not legally owe me that $100. So why am I explaining that to you? There's a tactic that we utilize here in credit consulting whenever we're working to fix a client's file, because you have a right to get any debts validated. Anybody that is on your credit report that is claiming that you owe them money, you have every legal right to request proof and verification. So number one, whenever you request proof and verification, if the debt is out of statute of limitation, there are some states that state that actually verifying of a debt is also looked at as an attempt to collect on the debt. So if the information is not verified, then that means that the credit bureau has to get that item off the credit report. So by making a payment on such collections, you actually are, again, resetting the last set of activity, which also reset the statute of limitation on such debt, and it's just not a good situation overall. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind. Another thing is, what do you call it? A lot of people forget that these collection companies, they literally have no legal binding to actually collect on the debts. And let me make that make sense, okay? Usually when a collection company purchases debt, they buy a bulk amount of debt. You know, let's just say Chase or American Express. Whenever you don't make the payment or your utility bills or whatever it is, they go ahead and they charge off the account. Okay, they mark it as a charge off. And the next step is they sell these debts to collection companies for literally pennies on the dollar. Okay, so when the collection companies receives it and they place a collection on your credit report, I want you to know, number one, any information on your credit report, they have to prove without a reasonable doubt that you are the actual individual, that the debt actually belongs to you. This is one of the reasons I told people not to even speak with collection companies. Here in a second, we're going to talk about the cease and desist and why this can be utilized in order to manage such collections. But when these collection companies purchase such debts, again, they usually about 99.9% of the time, they're not able to prove without a reasonable doubt that that debt actually belongs to you. They're not able to provide some type of document that you signed. They're not able to provide, just the validity given, outlined by the Fair Credit Reporting Act that they are required by law to show as proof when that validation is requested by you. So just that in itself is enough to get these items off your credit report without you actually paying for it. Now, what you want to do though is, if you're contacted by these collection companies, or if they're harassing you, because these collection companies are very good at what they do, and they're very trained individuals. So sometimes they will contact you, not just to even see if you can make a payment. They're trying to get you to actually validate the debt for them. They're trying to get you to actually claim that you are the individual that owe that money. So they'll ask you very tricky questions. They'll ask you what's your name. They'll ask you about the debt if you know about it. They'll even try to ask you things like, can you tell us when the next time you're getting paid? Is it possible that you can make a payment on this and that such date? Why is this important for you not to even speak with them at all? Because the last date of activity is governed by a few things. The last time you had made a payment, the last time you had maybe utilized the account, also any promise of future payments. Last time you made a promise to make a payment can also reset the date of activity, in addition to actually getting you to legally acknowledge the debt that they're actually in question. So I always say, just don't speak to any collection companies. If you have any collections on your credit report, you do want to speak with a credible credit consulting company like us, where we can help you navigate how to deal with that item so we can get it removed off your credit, with the intention being to improve your credit score, not just to settle the debt, because that doesn't do you any good. As I said earlier, nobody's losing sleep because they owe a collection company money. So I'm gonna leave you with this. I've given you a bunch of different tips I'm gonna give you this, because you're probably sitting there and you're thinking that, okay, what if I do got a collection? I mean, well, how do I deal with it? They're harassing my phone number. I've changed my phone almost 10 times. They're always figuring out what my number is. Okay, people do this. You know, one thing that most consumers do not know about is this clause that is actually given in the consumer rights. Consumers have more rights than these collection companies do. Okay, that you have what it's called a cease and desist. Okay, you want to remember those words, and you want to Google this up. That means when any creditor or collection companies contacts you, you can request a cease and desist, legally telling them that they cannot call you on your phone anymore. That in order for them to get in touch with you, they need to sue you through court, through a third party to get in touch with you. This is one of the things that I really loved when I got into the credit consulting industry, because I didn't know about this. I was one of those guys who was being harassed by collection companies, had to, block 10 numbers every single week, or had to change my phone number all the different times. But simply making this request, you can even tell the individual on the phone, hey, have you ever heard of what a cease and desist request is? I would like to place a cease and desist on this account. At that point, they cannot legally contact you ever again regarding that debt. Okay, so that's one thing that you need to do. Now, it does not mean that they stop reporting on your file or the debt disappears. They can still go through court and file a lawsuit on you. Now, again, depending on the amount of the debt, what type of debt it is, sometimes they might do that, sometimes they might not. That's why you want to speak with a credible credit consulting company. And I should add out there, this is not legal advice. It's only for entertainment purposes only. But hopefully I'm sharing you some good tips on how to deal with collection companies, why not to pay them. And I said you do not want to pay them because it doesn't do you any good. Okay? Why you don't want to pay them as well? They have no legal binding to collect. Why you don't want to pay them as well? The debt might actually be out of statute limitation based on your state. So anyway, hopefully I've outlined all those good reasons on why you should never pay a collection, and now you do know, even if you do get a collection, how to deal with it. Most importantly, place a cease and desist and try to find a reputable credit consulting company just like us who can help you remove that item off your credit report. If you forgot who I am, or if this is the first time joining us, of course, my name is Brian Otieno, and I help entrepreneurs just like yourself navigate the complexity of starting their dream business so they can get off the endless self-defeating point where rat race they're currently in and start living their life through business ownership. So anyway, I really appreciate your time. Hope you can join me in the next video, and you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.